Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the People Matters Success Navigator, the SHRPA Leadership Interview Series. An interview series where we talk with top tech and HR leaders across Asia Pacific and Middle East to delve into some of the pressing challenges, opportunities, and imperatives for HR in the region. Today, it's my pleasure to have Manjul Tilak, CHRO of Piramal Enterprises Ltd. It's great to have you with us, Manjul.
Thank you, Dhruv. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Great. And for readers out there, this entire conversation is going to be around how can HR really look at acing change management and improve their own agility to sort of better deliver on business results in 2025. With that, Manju, let me dive straight first into my initial questions. And this is around a finding of our recently published SHRPA research report, where we found skills, agility, and digital readiness were three top skill demands that CXOs across Asia Pacific and India are really looking at to be successful. In your business need, how are you sort of responding to this growing demand? And if you had to look at, the HR ecosystem in India at large, what are some key talent initiatives required to meet this business demand of skills, agility, and a digital ready workforce?
Sure. I think you've started with a great question, Dhruv. The requirement of these skills by the CXOs is reaching an all-time high right now. Okay.
Right.
But at this particular point in time, let me share with you that at Piramal, we have a head start over many other organizations in this space.
Right.
Which is because we found our bearings on the retail lending space about 5 years back, right? And I think it
Right.
was a very conscious decision of our leaders that we should be building a tech first company. So
Right.
which basically means that our high tech and high touch business model ensures that my employees are already conversant with the digital way of working, right? So which means that my tech data business teams and product teams specifically use the agile model of working, and that basically also means that there is a particular level of tech proficiency that our employees typically have right now. However, this does not say that in the last 1 or 2 years, all the disruptions that have happened, particularly AI and Gen AI, do not impact us. Yeah. So therefore, challenges exist for us, with respect to driving usage, adoption, our ability to refine, and the leadership, by the way, has given us a mandate that in the next 1 year, which is the financial year FY26, we have to become an AI native company, right? And therefore the process that we are wanting to put in place is through sensitization workshops, is through training programs, virtual modules. And when we go to people, it will not just be about theory. There are lots and lots of business applications of AI and Gen AI that we've already put in place. So our impact, our objective and endeavor is going to be to actually go and share with people what our journey has been, our current journey, as well as how what is the roadmap that is that has been envisaged by the leaders for us. So therefore, to sum the whole thing up, I would say that the capability to build these skills in house, build AI solutions in house, and making sure that people at the last level, or the last mile, are also up the curve in appreciating and using these skills to be becoming more productive and benefiting themselves in the whole bargain as well.
Great, great. It's great to hear from you, Manjul, the tech first approach, as you sort of mentioned, because this leads me to my second question, where we looked at HR leaders and businesses across India, and a lot of them said, digital transformation, raising productivity through AI. A lot of these tech first HR initiatives are still at a nascent stage, or they're dissatisfied with the results that they're getting out of these initiatives. Why do you think there is still a high level of dissatisfaction within HR leaders in India today in implementing a lot of these advanced technologies? And if you had to sort of look at strategies that HR leaders should be following in 2025, what would your recommendations be there?
So Dhruv, I think the dissatisfaction will primarily emanate out of the absence of a couple of things. Okay, the
Sure.
absence of, for example, a framework to address these challenges in their organizations, the absence of a mindset on the need of these skills or changes, and lastly, I think the absence of a mechanism to execute these changes that are required in the system. Yeah, so therefore I think the strategies that HR leaders have to kind of bring in would be on how do you bring in that compelling mindset that people are able to buy in of why this change is required. Because if you've created that need in a proper in the correct proportion, then I think a lot of tailwinds will start acting on the whole cause, and therefore you'll be able to do a lot of things, bring in more people, bring in more resources, and be able to kind of put in a framework that will help you execute and bring people up the curve. So typically I would say dissatisfaction is being caused by the fact that necessary groundwork may not have been done in organizations, and therefore that is what they will need to probably do and come up the curve on.
Right, right, right. Are there any practices? I mean, you did touch upon how at Piramal you've really looked at a lot of these agile first approaches. But in your past experience, or maybe looking at 2025, are there any specific initiatives that you have planned where you're really leveraging AI and advanced analytics to sort of make your HR impact better?
Yeah, so tons of them. The whole idea is through that, we are creating most of these AI solutions, as I mentioned, earlier to you. We are creating them in
Yeah.
house, right? So
Right,
therefore, we've got a huge database of, of use cases, which are, there are teams which are specifically working on actually making sure that they see the light of the day, right? And therefore,
right,
our approach is, don't go in for the best solution at the very first go. Go with an MVP, go down to the ground, test it out and roll it out in a pilot sort of a region, pilot sort of an area, and then look at how do are you institutionalizing that entire change that you're bringing in. We resort, one of the practices that we resort to is a lot of hackathons. So there are tons and tons of interfaces that we've built with these large big colleges, where we go back to them with problems, and there are people who are working on them, and we are able to kind of get the results out of this whole thing, and we put all those solutions on the ground. So I think it is about how are you rallying or getting the various resources together to make sure that you're finding a solution that's practical, workable, and faster on the ground. So typically that.
right. You mentioned a mindset and skills shift in your last answer, and it's not surprising perhaps, but what we found that to sort of not just improve their ability to manage and leverage technology, but also deliver business impact. Around 57% of HR leaders are going to prioritize improving their own functional effectiveness and tech skills in the next coming 12 to 18 months. As a CHRO, what are some areas that you are looking to sort of develop within yourself and your HR teams? And if you again had to sort of prescribe to the larger HR ecosystem some areas that will help them improve their ability to execute, what would those areas be for HR today?
So, I'll take this question in two parts, Dhruv. The first part is that, like we are doing for the rest of the organization, I think, one of the agendas that we picked in HR is how do we drive in, or how do we bring in more people science into, people management? Yeah. How do we bring in
Right.
more science, more data analytics into the whole area of people management? So therefore, whether it is setting up productivity benchmarks or designing incentive schemes, or hiring better, or for that matter, listening to people on the ground. I think we've got, some AI solutions built around all these things that we are talking about. So our solutions are not just about designing the whole incentive scheme, but also making sure that when people are at various milestones, or close by to their milestones of achieving incentives, there is a nudge that is kind of coming towards them, telling them what is it that they additionally can do, right? So there are AI solutions built around this entire thing, and I think all these things are coming on the basis of the understanding of the HR people of the business, right? right? So which means that we are talking about not just building people and data skills in our HR team, but also making sure how are these skills applicable to people on the ground. Yeah, so I think that
Right.
is one big area that we are looking at. So all these things, I would say we've covered a sufficient amount of ground on this. What we are trying to work this year is bringing in more AI into the learning and the whole talent management function. So our learning teams are typically working on, bringing AI into the learning and talent management sort of space as well. And if you to ask me, what is it that the HR leaders need to do? I think HR leaders, first of all, I think the biggest responsibility that falls on them is how do they themselves come up the curve on showing appreciation of the business and what are the business use cases. So I think that is one big thing that the HR leaders should be holding themselves accountable for. And then of course, as it's a large change management process,
Right.
the building the whole compelling vision, a rigorous execution plan, coming back, making changes to that whole plan, keeping an iterative process. I think all that responsibilities falls in the bucket of the HR leaders, according to me.
Right, right. It's great that you mentioned, change management, because one of the areas that the report highlighted is HR leaders, and this is not just India. Again, this is across, Asia Pacific and the Middle East, where change management has I mean, it often becomes an afterthought where, while HR leaders are expected today to sort of lead that entire change management piece. So if you had to look at maybe the next 1 year, and if you had to look at 2025, where, we already have technologies like agentic AI, and we have a lot of these newer technologies coming in, what aspects of change management journey do you recommend HR leaders to really strengthen? And what are some priorities that you have within Piramal today?
Okay, so Dhruv, on this, I think the principles of change management are not going to be changing. So which basically
Right.
means that you have to have as clear a picture as possible of where you want to go, okay, and in how much time. But then I think the whole differentiation will happen in terms of how are you, as I mentioned earlier, how are you able to create that compelling vision? How are you able to get the necessary people to buy in? What are the kind of levers and resources you are allocating to this entire initiative or intervention? And then what is the kind of an execution plan that you have made? So so all these things will remain the same. I think what
Right.
will create a real difference is what sort of a resilience mindset have you been able to bring about? Because that there will be people who will be saying that you don't know, I've got my quarterly targets to meet. I can't spare my people, my resources are not available, the quality of your content is not right. But I think this is where that iterative problem solving, again pressing the right levers, and making sure that you are on your journey with full amount of perseverance and the gumption that is required. So I think all these softer aspects are going to be determining it finally whether you'll be successful on this journey or not. So I think the basic fundamentals of how change management happens or is to be done, but with resilience, with iterative problem solving, with all these softer aspects taking charge of the whole project or intervention.
Right, right. This actually brings me to my last question for today, Manjul, and this is looking at how HR itself is being structured today and what operating models it uses, because there is a demand again from what we've seen from business for HR to really be more agile. Um, I mean, to the extent where in India, around 76% of leaders are saying that they're going to make their HR deliveries model more agile. So, if you had to look at from an operating model standpoint, what shifts are you seeing, externally and even internally in how HR operates today? And how do you think HR leaders should really lead the agility conversation within itself to sort of empower its business results?
So Dhruv, I think the most important thing, and that will be the the fundamental of this, that HR folks, leaders, or otherwise, they need to have that business acumen and understanding of what really makes their business tick. So what are the
Right.
financial levers? How do you do business? How do you get revenue? And your fundamentals very very clear on that. Yeah. Now what we need to build on is how do we kind of get in digital tech and data, to work on, the various processes. How do you kind of make sure that you are able to automate your work processes? How is it that you are designing, personalized employee experiences basis feedback that you gather from employee engagement surveys or pulse surveys or behavioral analytics? So a lot of these things typically would be required by, the HR folks to be able to make sense out of what is happening. Yeah. So therefore,
Right.
there was a second part to your question. If you could just repeat that one, Dhruv.
Looking at, I mean, it was around how agility can really be defined and improved in 2025 by HR teams across India.
Yeah. So I think the to answer that part, agility typically would be about, your ability to quickly make sense or connect the dots. About
Right.
how are you able to build in or bring in cross functional collaboration. How are you able to, again, build in and weave processes which are, which are centered around employee self-service, about AI chatbots, and how are you making sense of whatever you are gathering through all these. Yeah. So agility will be about, making sense of a lot of these things coming together, and you're able to, produce the outcomes for the organization that are expected of you. So typically that.
Great. Thank you for that, Manjul. I am done with my questions, but this is something that we've done with a lot of our interviews in this series. As a closing statement, Manjul, looking at 2025, especially in the aspect of HR's own skill development, HR's own ability to be more agile. Is there any closing comment that you would want our listeners to really pay attention to in the coming year?
So I think, while I've spoken a lot about, Dhruv, the, tech and data and digital skills, etc.,
Right.
I think
Right.
one thing that, HR folks should not forget about is the human centric approach. Yeah. So which means that,
Right.
while you can keep putting, a lot of these tools, a lot of these sort of mechanisms in place to be able to get feedback, understand trends, etc., but ultimately, you're going to be delivering them, a lot through the human touch. Yeah. So which is I think something that I keep talking to my team about, that irrespective of the kind of data churning capabilities that we garner or claim to have, that touch of, the employee, that there is a function or there is an organization that is listening to them and is responsive, should never go away. Yeah. So I think,
Right.
my last words would be that, do whatever you have to on all these skills, but never lose that human touch or that human centric approach.
Great. Thank you, Manju. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your time. It's been a insightful conversation, and thank you to our listeners who have joined
Thank
us
you.
today.
Thank you, Dhruv. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.